Ladies and gentlemen, this is it. This is gonna be a grand finale conclusion of our entire Let's Play of Princess Peach Showtime. Because of that, we've got one last thing to do. And as a result, not only are we able to have a rematch against with the exact same bosses again, but it's also about the fact that we can able to collect the last batch of sparkle crystals, just in case we can able to actually purchase every single furnitures for certain floors. Hey, what is up ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Tiana here once again, and I am back for the likes of the Mixie Toys videos once again. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Princess Peach Showtime for the Nintendo Switch. So, last time, we've essentially did manage to fully complete every single rehearsals, even though it only took me about a couple of tries for specifically Mighty Rehearsal and few occasional moments in Journey forms of in Dashing Thief Peach. Well, this is clearly because no matter what though, I clearly did not pay attention to trying to able to avoid as many of those hazards as I could, but thankfully though, we did manage to tackle for those no problem. So, as I mentioned this to you guys today, this is it. This is gonna be the true finale of our Let's Play of Princess Peach Showtime. And as a result, we've only got one more thing to take care of, and that's what appears to be a familiar challenges. Well, for those of you probably wondering about the fact that if you're following through our Let's Play of Yoshi's Crafted World ever since in 2020, right? Well, basically though, it's about the fact that when you beat the game once, then as a result, as you can see, that we're about to able to have a rematch against with the exact same bosses as before, except the fact that as you can tell, we now have missions. So because of this though, much like the forms of how it does it in Yoshi's Crafted World, and same applies with the forms of Warrior Land, the Shake Dimension, basically though is about the fact that each and every single bosses do have 3 missions each. So as a result, no matter what though, I will try my best able to actually complete all of those missions in one run. So as a result, no matter what though, is about the fact that if you couldn't tell already, about the fact that, well, today's date of course there is the 30th of June today, in some cases in 2024 today. So naturally speaking though, is about the fact that I would have liked able to discuss upon what's been happening recently so far, but for now, I think we can probably able to actually talk about the forms of these boss challenges for right now anyway. So, and as I mentioned this before, for those of you who already experienced not only Warrior Land Shake It, or specifically Warrior Land the Shake Dimension, as well as Yoshi's Crafted World, basically though is about the fact that if you really want to get out of your way to able to go for a full 100% completion, basically though is about the fact that if you really want to have a rematch against with certain bosses again, well, by all means you can now do that, except the fact that the noticeable difference is this time, you're now going to be participating in boss challenges, specifically the mission objectives. So, and as I mentioned this before, there's only 3 of them for each and every single boss, so as a result, no matter what though, the entire boss battle itself plays very identically to the forms of how it does it when you first time encountering it, except the fact that, well, for those of you probably wondering about the fact that how these missions actually plays out to be, well, some of them are actually specific for certain bosses, like for example, we're about to fight against with Disco Wing presumably for the final time, and basically those about the fact that 2 of those missions in particular does encourage you to able to actually deal with, well, for instance, we need to take care of these guys right here, and as a result, if you're trying to able to do this successfully, then obviously though you can get one of those sparkle gems. And another one of those specific missions, you have to keep this in mind, is that we need to able to hit Disco Wing with that particular disco ball projectile without missing a single shot. So because of that though, and I somehow accidentally failed the one of those missions. And there's also the 3rd mission type, where basically though is about the fact that we need to deal with the actual boss without taking a single hit. So because of this though, now, unlike the forms of how it does it in Warrior Land, as well as the forms of, well, specifically Warrior Land, the Shake Dimension, alongside with the forms of Yoshi's Crafted World, that one of those additional missions you do have to consider, which appears to be time-based challenge. Well, thankfully in Princess Peach Showtime, thank goodness there's no time challenges or anything else like that, because if you imagine if it does have it though, this means it all makes the entire process a lot more difficult and challenging. So because of that though, and relatively speaking, if you couldn't tell already, I've decided able to actually fight against with Disco Wing for probably for the true final time, because I do need to complete one of those missions in particular. So, Now, for the most part, certain missions are not too shabby for the most part. However, whenever I first played this game though, there was one particular mission I always get stuck on when it comes to boss challenges in particular, and that could be involved around Projection Cat. And you see what I mean if we get onto that particular boss rematch encounter. So because of this though, yeah, for those of you probably wondering about the fact that this is technically the post commentary, so just in case I just aren't able to actually go through several frustrating moments here and there. I mean, for the most part, about the fact that when it comes to Disco Wing, when it comes to the actual boss rematch, for specifically with mission objectives needs to be completed, it honestly did took me about 2 attempts. So because of that though, because obviously though, I somehow only completed 2 missions so far, and now I'm gonna be able to try to achieve the 3rd and the final mission to complete during the forms within the 2nd run of this particular boss battle. So anyways, let's get into the forms of the actual topics at this point today, and that's out of nowhere. Back in Journey Forms Within, you know about the fact that with the Xbox game showcase has already been shown off ever since in Journey Forms Within. Let's just say it's been like roughly 20 days ago since you know, Xbox game showcase has been revealed. That basically though, not only does it reveal Call of Duty Black Ops 6 within both the gameplay footage alongside with the trailer itself, but also out of nowhere is that not only we're going to be getting not 1, not 2, but 3 new additions to Xbox Series X/S game consoles. So 2 of which are the forms of Xbox Series X, and then the other one which appears to be Xbox Series S. So for instance, we're about to be getting the special edition Xbox Series X with 2 terabytes with the forms of Galaxy Black variant. So, and for what I've seen the actual system like this, it does look pretty cool to me though, especially concerning not only does it shows us the forms the exact same color as the forms of how it does it since back in 2020, but also get this, is about the fact that when it comes to the forms of the stand of the Xbox Series X system, alongside with the forms of the controller grip, that basically it now shows us the green color. So, pretty cool stuff though. Well, it makes sense, because concerning for the fact that not only does it match the actual color tone, for not only for the sake of the phones of the OG Xbox, as well as Xbox 360, and as well as Xbox One, and even with Xbox Series X/S, in regards to the forms of the actual physical game cases for, you know, multiple Xboxes for certain generations. So, but I digress. So yeah, that pretty much takes care of every single aspect when it comes to Disco Wing, and now we're moving on to Light Thang next. So, now as far as I'm aware, is about the fact that when it comes to the forms of the mission objectives, as far as I'm aware, that basically in this one right here, is that, well, you still have to deal with the forms of trying to deal with the boss fights without taking a single hit, but it's also about the fact that, as you can tell, similar to the forms of how it does it on regular plays, is that, as you can tell, we need to grab every single pieces of the Sparkle Gem. And as a result, if you manage able to obtain all of those pieces of the Sparkle Gem, then obviously though, the Sparkle Gem will be yours to keep. So, it kind of reminds me of the forms of trying to find all of these Master Emerald pieces for both Sonic Adventures as well as Sonic Adventure 2. So basically though, it's about the fact that, except the fact that there's no radar or anything, so you can clearly see the actual specific pieces on screen, so that way you can able to actually hopefully try to obtain it just before you realize about the fact that you need to be fast at this point, especially concerning for the fact that there's also the forms of another mission objective you can do, not only about the fact that we need to able to be stealth based, but it's also about the fact that you don't able to actually activate the time rewind feature, because otherwise, if he dares smash able to rewind time, this means we pretty much failed the mission. So because of that though, luckily, much like the forms of how it does it in both Warrior Land, the Shake Dimension, alongside with the forms of Yoshi's Crafted World, thankfully though, you don't have to necessarily try to worry about complete all of those missions in one go. So thankfully though, you can able to actually do multiple runs, so just in case you can able to actually save time. So as a result, unlike the forms of how it does it in Crash Bandicoot 4, it's about time that if you really want to get out of your way to go for a 106% completion, oh god, getting all the actual perfect relics is gonna be not only tough, but it also drives you mad if you keep on failing for that particular challenge. So, But anyway, though, back into what I was saying about the forms of the Xbox systems they somehow revealed. Now, I mentioned about this earlier, about the fact that yes, indeed, there's going to be yet another addition to the Xbox Series X, except the fact that this time around, though, there's no disk drive. So as a result, it's going to be all digital, and as a result, it does manage to contain 1 terabyte, and the color choice this time would appears to be by the forms of robot white, which that could be also applies with Series S as well. But the only difference is being for this point is that obviously that was about the fact that they also shown us yet another new addition to Xbox Series S, and there's one new addition to that, and that's what appears to be the upgraded terabyte. So, or specifically the upgraded storage. Whilst normally back then, in 2020, it did say 512 gigabytes, at least as far as I can recall correctly, whilst now we're able to actually finally get a chance to able to get 1 terabyte version. So yeah, that's actually pretty cool. I'm not exactly sure when those specific systems will be releasing on, but for what I can gather about the fact that hopefully I'm also able to guarantee to able to get myself Xbox Series S 1 terabyte, especially concerning for the fact that, well, obviously though, if you couldn't tell, we're almost running out of room for our video game console cabinets for right now, especially concerning for the fact that we are still waiting for the Nintendo Switch successor during at some point in next year in 2025, especially concerning for the fact that we've got a lot more games left for the Nintendo Switch. So anyway, speaking of which though, is about the fact that I've also realized about something, is that one of those games in particular, called Prince of Persia Sands of Time Remake, that I know for a fact that a lot of players are really hyped about that particular remake, well, suffice to say, about the fact that it did indeed finally confirms the actual release date for Prince of Persia Sands of Time remake, and that's going to come out at some point until 2026, along the same year as the films of not only Fast 10 Part 2, but it's also about the fact that with the new Mario movie is about to be on its way as well, alongside with many others as well, including Toy Story 5, and you pretty much name the rest of it. So but anyway, so that pretty much takes care of the forms of light thing. So, oh no, that was actually pretty easy to me, especially concerning for the fact that we had to be fast on that point. So, anyway, so now let's move on to Projection Cat. So as a result, this is one of those missions I was going to be on about. Well, for the most part, it's self-explanatory. Like, basically, though, when it comes to missions, obviously, though, you can't afford to get hit, obviously. But there's also 2 other missions. Well, for the most part, one of them is actually not that big of a deal. Like, basically, though, we have to use this particular mouse bomb for specifically 3 times. Because otherwise, if you miss that specific, bomb tossing thing, or specifically if you don't manage to able to do 3 consecutive hits with the false the mouse bomb, obviously though you have to try that mission again. But there is one in particular mission that I always get frustrated with, even whenever I first got to this point, whenever I first played this game. And that's what appears to be you cannot afford to able to get hit by not only his paws, but it's also about the fact that with this very inconsistent tail. So no matter what though, if you dare touch the forms of not only for its paws, but it's also with the tail as well, obviously though, you are seriously gonna get screwed right there. So yeah, that is definitely the most frustrating part about this mission for me. So, which is especially noticeable because it's all really depending on the forms of the actual mouse bomb placement that you somehow managed able to maneuver around. But it's also worth noting for us about the fact that if you dare get cornered by not only for its paws, but it's also with the tail as well, then obviously you will still able to actually get messed up with that particular mission alone. So yeah, I consider this to be without a doubt is the hardest mission I've ever done in this whole entire game, especially concerning for the fact that again, whenever I first got to this mission, or specifically with the actual boss rematch against with the forms of Projection Cat, obviously though, it did took me about a couple of tries. So either way though, I mean for the most part the other 2 missions it's not that right to hum about to me though, but it's just that one mission alone just gives me a lot of trouble. So anyway, while on the subject of when it comes to the forms of cats anyway, is that I can't believe by saying this is about the fact that it's been like 19 days ago, where basically that was about the fact that one of those films in particular, called Garfield the Movie, you know, with the live-action movie that came out since 2004, well, Apparently though, that film is now became 20 this year, just recently. So yeah, happy 20th anniversary of the film's release of Garfield the movie, which, you know, the 2004 version I was on about. So, anyway, the next thing I want to point out as well, in regards to the forms of what's been going on, and that's what appears to be about the fact that, well, suffice to say, Twitter/X support has officially been removed for your Nintendo Switch. So this means about the fact that they somehow address something when it comes to the forms of the removal of that particular Twitter or X, you know, postage or something. So, for instance, the option to post to Twitter or X nowadays when sharing from the album in the Nintendo Switch home menu was removed, and also the ability to post Super Smash Bros. Ultimate screenshots from the album in the Nintendo Switch home menu to Smash World in the Nintendo Switch Online smart device app was also removed. And the option to link X, formerly Twitter, from settings, user settings to posting to social media was also removed. So yeah, that's gonna be kind of strange thing to try to get used to it with it. So, I'm sure enough that was about the fact that I don't usually use that feature more often. Well, this is clearly because I'm pretty much more accustomed to playing video games on my Nintendo Switch, of course. Especially noticeable because recently, I did somehow manage able to continue playing through Luigi's Mansion 2 HD for a bit. So just in case I can able to actually practice with the controls just before he decided to do that particular Let's Play of Luigi's Mansion 2 at long last, especially concerning for the fact that, well, we very appreciate able to finally get a chance to do the entire trilogy of the Luigi's Mansion games. So, anyway, so that pretty much does it for Projection Cat. Now let's move on to Spot Lion. So, I believe for the most part, Spot Lion is also pretty self-explanatory. I mean, the only thing you need to keep this in mind, though, is about the fact that obviously when it comes to mission objectives, when it comes to the boss challenges and stuff like that, as you can see, that this ball projectile, when it comes to patterns and stuff, well, suffice to say, normally it was expected able to show us the forms of that particular standard projectile. Well, as you can tell, I accidentally restart the fight because, as far as I'm aware, we need to do a consecutive amount of shots until you're able to actually complete this mission, like 9 consecutive reflective attacks. So, yeah, for instance, if you couldn't tell, rather than just trying to able to actually use a simple, like, non-pattern projectile in order to able to deal with the amount of damage to Spot Lion. So as you can tell, we now need to able to deal with the amount of damage to Spot Lion if it does have patterns on them, specifically the striped ones. So yeah, that's something worth to pointing out, especially concerning for the fact that, again, I do apologize if my commentary is a little bit slightly iffy at some point. Well, this is clearly because no matter what, though, it's about the fact that, much like the forms of how it does it in 2022, alongside with the phones of 2012 as well as 2013 respectively, that there's going to be a lot of uploading schedules struggling at the moment, which hopefully though until later on during the forms event this year in particular, alongside with the forms event next year for 2025, hopefully we'll be back on track when it comes to able to try to do a lot of like Let's Plays in particular, so alongside with some more uploading schedules in particular. So, and it's also worth noting for, actually, is about the fact that, unfortunately, though, our laptop at the moment is actually going to get also some bit of struggles with it. I mean, don't get me wrong, it still works fine enough, but it's that one particular problem that we somehow want to address that thing, and that's what appears to be the returning of the battery, you know, drainage problem, which as a result, I mean, luckily the charger still works, but unfortunately though, our laptop battery itself refuses to charge. So because of that though, my guess is about the fact that the actual battery itself is absolutely flat. So no matter what though, we'll try to able to actually get the battery sorted eventually, to able to make things a lot more better as far as I'm aware. So either way though, I'm just a little bit too annoyed about the fact that when it comes to this particular, you know, technical problems for the sake of the forms of what has been going on and stuff like that. So anyway, also I just realized about something is about the fact that when it comes to the forms of the actual development for the likes of Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, I'm almost assuming about the fact that it's usually been made by Next Level Games, just like the forms of how it does it on the 3DS version. Well, actually, as it turns out, is about the fact that the actual developer, for the sake of Luigi's Mansion 2 this time around, is being made by the forms of a company called, well, let's just say, Tantalus is the developer behind Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, which I was not expecting that, especially concerning for the fact that I'm almost assuming, again, it's going to be Next Level Games, but that's not the case at all. So, not exactly sure what's the plan with it though, but as far as I've also noticed about this as well, that there's even more changes to the forms of how it does it on the 3DS version of Luigi's Mansion 2, or Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon for those of you who lived in America. Like, for instance, it's about the fact that when it comes to the forms of the gameplay changes for Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, is that the map is now displayed at the top right corner due to the Nintendo Switch's lack of the bottom screen. And the Dark Light device meter is now displayed over Luigi instead of the forms of the top right corner. And missions are displayed on the left side, while the mission description and score are displayed on the right side, you know, with the forms of the actual mission selection screen. And of course, much like the forms of how it does it in Luigi's Mansion 1, as well as Luigi's Mansion 3, that the title screen now actually features a location in the background. So that's more like it to me though, especially unlike the 3DS version, that basically there's no detailed background. I understand about the forms of the lack of detailed background, but that's just clearly because of the handheld's limitations, and it's also on the 3DS itself as well, so anyway, and it also mentions about the fact that HD Rumble has now been added for certain actions, including sucking up ghosts, and motion controls are now utilized for adjusting the camera, and playing Skyscraper Online requires a subscription to Nintendo Switch Online rather than being tied to Nintendo Network as with the original release. And it's also worth noting for, yes indeed, the game is locked at 30 FPS, or specifically 30 frames per second, as opposed to the original game's uncapped frame rate, which could range from 30 to 60 frames per second, and Luigi can now look around like in Luigi's Mansion 3 by using the right analog stick, and also there's actually the starting time limit during the forms of in Skyscraper's Rush mode has been extended from 30 seconds to 45 seconds, so that's actually quite interesting. So, and it's also worth noting for when it comes to text and localization changes, well, character head icons are no longer in the dialogue, instead displaying their names like in Luigi's Mansion 3. And there's also poltergeists and Skyscraper are referred to as such in regions where they are respectively called Buffoons and Thrill Tower in the original game. So because of that though, and I found it was a little bit odd too, is that since I've still managed to get myself Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, likely or so for the physical version of the game, I do found out about the fact that the European version, or the UK version I should say, there was actually that one specific error that I somehow stumbled across into, and that's what it appears to be, it's missing its S letter, which I was assuming I accidentally got myself the Japanese copy of the game. Well, whenever I managed able to play the game on my actual Nintendo Switch itself, it still says Luigi's Mansion 2 HD as opposed to Luigi Mansion 2 HD, which I've no idea why they somehow managed able to get that error when it comes to the forms of that particular label of that particular Switch game card. So, I'm not exactly sure what's causing it the problem, but oh well, no big deal. So as you can tell, we've now decided able to have a fight against with Grape again. And no matter what though, it's about the fact that when it comes to the forms of those missions of, you know, with the forms of Grape herself, basically though, I think 2 of those missions in particular, that does encourage you to able to deal with a boss fight without taking a single hit. And there's also another mission, which is only specifically on the first phase of a fight, where basically though you cannot afford able to defeat all those dancers. You see these dancers in the background? Likely also they try to protect Grape herself. basically though, you cannot afford able to actually deal with them, because otherwise, if you accidentally killed one of those dancers, then obviously though, you have to retry that mission again. So, and thankfully though, the other two missions in particular, that basically though, they are divided into two phases. So, let's just say, for instance, we can't afford able to get hit on the first phase of the fight, and there's also you can't afford to get hit on the second phase of the fight. So, fundamentally speaking, though, it's about the fact that I will admit it though right away, that the second phase is always going to be super duper easy to me, especially concerning for the fact that obviously though it's about the fact that this will be a true definition of the final time to able to actually turn into Radiant Peach, or specifically Super Radiant Peach, for specifically on the second phase of this fight. So either way, that's as far as I can try to think about it. So, and there's also another thing that's worth noting for, is that the Boo in the mansion sticky situation has its name changed from Oogie Booga to Booyathon. I think it's what it says anyway, to mod the classical composer Ludwig von Beethoven, as the Boo was hiding in the piano. So I suppose we'll talk more about that if we get around on doing our Let's Play of Luigi's Mansion 2 at some point. So either way. And finally, when it comes to graphical changes with that particular version of the game I was on about, basically though, as the title address, or the title indicates, Luigi's Mansion 2 HD is rendered in high definition rather than the original version's low definition. So, and on top of that, all the characters have upgraded models more closely resembling those of Luigi's Mansion 3. Like, for example, Luigi has visible yellow threads on his overalls, like as we saw for about a couple of trailers ago. And there's also with the forms of the Boos have glowing outlines around them. And also the Boo in Visual Tricks has a visual tongue and has a different expression when it discovers that the objects it hit are visible again. And finally, gold bars have stars on them, so that makes it a little bit alive when it comes to the forms of the actual visual effects, but if you do manage to come across into specific collectibles or anything else like that. So that's as far as I was trying to able to think about when it comes to the forms of certain comparisons with the forms of the original version of Luigi's Mansion 2 compared to the forms of how it does it in the the HD port for the Nintendo Switch. So anywho, there's also another thing I want to talk about the forms of today's topic, and that's what appears to be, well, yes indeed, ladies and gentlemen, and that's what I have to be about the fact that, yes indeed, I finally managed to get a chance to see Inside Out 2 on the big screen. So, and what do I think about it? It's amazing. Well, mind you, I'm probably not going to mention any spoilers, because obviously though, with newer films came out during that time, I'm probably not going to mention any spoilers. So, yeah, because of that though, I finally get a chance to actually get a chance to watch Inside Out 2, and funnily speaking though, it's about the fact that earlier on, in during the forms of this whole entire process, when it comes to able to actually see Inside Out 2, I've recently managed able to rewatch the first film, so just in case I can able to actually get myself my full recap of the actual storytelling. So, as far as I'm aware, I absolutely do enjoy Inside Out 1 as well as Inside Out 2 respectively. And what do I think about it? As I said before, it's amazing. And would I recommend it to you guys? Absolutely. Especially concerning for the fact that, again, it's been 9 years ago since the original film first came out, since in 2015. And it's kind of unfair about the fact that the actual DVD release has not been confirmed yet, but I'm sure enough though it will draw out due time though. Well, clearly about the fact I was really hoping it might actually release that during at some point around the same month as the forms of probably October, for the likely or so for able to come out at the exact same time, or specifically the exact same month actually, as in not only Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, or even with Super Mario Party Jamboree, neither with Sonic Cross Shadow Generations. But then again, we'll have to wait and see what happens in due time, especially concerning for the fact that it might actually do the exact same situation. Although, kind of thinking about it, it has been a very long while since we've actually last mentioned about the forms of something more DVD related things, especially concerning for the fact that, like I said before, the uploading schedules has gone pretty slowly recently, especially after the events of so many issues we're having throughout. Well, let's just say the first half of the year has pretty meh to me, especially concerning for the fact that, don't get me wrong, I do enjoy most aspects when it comes to the films of the first half of the year so far, like for instance, about the fact that when it comes to the game selections, I obviously do enjoy Mario vs. Donkey Kong Remake, alongside with Princess Peach Showtime, despite the fact that it was actually, like, pretty easy for the most part, and as far as I'm aware, Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door Switch Remake is obviously the highlight of the first half of the year in my opinion. And on top of all that stuff though, when it comes to certain films I do seem to be able to enjoy so far, when it comes to the films of the first half of the year, that's of course, as I mentioned this earlier, Inside Out 2, alongside with the films of Kung Fu Panda 4. Although, I will admit though right away, while looking back during the films of Kung Fu Panda 4 now, that I feel like it's actually the weakest installment when it comes to the films of the traditional Kung Fu Panda movies in my opinion. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not too bad, but it's just about the fact that the only drawback about that film to me though, is that you know, the Furious 5 has not been appeared throughout the majority of the film, apart from the fact that, well, we're probably not going to mention any spoilers from now on. So anyways, if you couldn't tell already, this will be a true definition of the final timetable to actually take on Grape now, because as far as I'm aware, I unfortunately though did somehow failed one of those mission objectives, and that's what appears to be on the first phase of the fight, which appears to be do not afford to get hit in journey forms within the first phase of a fight. So, to be expected for the most part, especially concerning for the fact that I was trying to rush for this, especially concerning for the fact that on my first run through, that I have to take my time, especially concerning I don't want to accidentally hit any of those specific dancers, or specifically do not seem to able to defeat any of those dancers. So either way, there's also another thing I want to point out as well, and that's what appears to be about the fact that it's kind of unfortunate that there's no Sonic Central Direct, which as a result, specifically in this month so far, in June 2024, maybe they'll try to able to actually bring up Sonic Central later down the road, maybe also for next month in July. Well, it's a bit difficult to tell at this point, but luckily though, Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy has now sold 20 million units worldwide. So yeah, that's actually pretty impressive, especially concerning for the fact that obviously though, Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy now receives multiple versions, ranging from PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch, and even PC Steam. So because of that though, yeah, that's actually pretty cool and everything. So I really don't know if about the fact that they'll try to bring another 2 re-releases for both PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X, but that does not seem to be the case, because obviously though, thankfully though, when it comes to the forms of that particular game alone, within either on the PlayStation 4 as well as Xbox One versions, thankfully though, they can also be played on the current generation of consoles for right now, within the 9th generation as a matter of fact, within both PlayStation 5 alongside with Xbox Series X, so that's something worth noting for. But there we go folks, I think suffice to say that pretty much does it for every single missions in the entire boss challenges. So, actually, I will admit though right away, it's not as bad as I thought I was going to. Whilst unlike in Yoshi's Crafted Worlds, that one of those bosses in particular, which appears to be on one of those secret worlds, if you managed able to beat the game for the first time, basically though, the Chemic boss fight where it comes to not only the boss battle itself, but it's also the boss challenges itself is downright frustrating. Especially because not only you have to be absolutely perfect, but it's also about the fact that you can't afford to able to actually get far behind when it comes to time limit and everything. So, but at least I fully appreciate about the fact that there's no time limit in any of those boss challenges in this game right here, so everything else is self-explanatory. So, but anyway, something's worth noting for as far as what Sonic has already mentioned about this, ever since in Journey forms have been Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric so far, that yes indeed he did somehow mention about the forms of one of those games in particular is coming, which appears to be Dragon Quest III HD 2D remake. That's apparently though, what I've also noticed is about the fact that when it comes to Dragon Quest III HD 2D remake, will feature 3 difficulty settings and quality of life changes. So, for instance, it's about the fact that I believe that they somehow managed able to bring us into quite a lot of few things, like auto-saving function, and in addition to the forms of other things I would like to mention about, but there's a lot of information I can probably think about. So either way though, yeah, that's as far as I can think about it. But also I've noticed something about this as well recently, since in 5 days ago, that basically though, Beyond Good and Evil, the 20th anniversary edition has been released just recently. For not only for the Nintendo Switch, but also with multiple platforms as well. Likely also for the fact that they did manage to able to feature some improvements, like improved visuals, controls, and audio, alongside with the brand new autosave and cross-save features. So, yeah, that's actually pretty cool though. And also, as far as I'm aware, that Splatoon 3 is also going to be receiving its a cool addition to that particular game, and it's currently at the moment it's going to be announced during the forms within the Japanese version so far. So as a result, it looks like that Splatoon 3 plus expansion pass boxed version, or the boxed release, has been announced for Japan. So obviously though, it will contain the game itself alongside with the forms of the expansion pass. So this means you can able to actually access to not only in Gobbler's hub world ever since in Splatoon 1, but also with the forms of side-ordered DLC as well. So, but anyway, so as you can tell, we somehow managed to beat the likes of Grape once and for all for the final time, not only for the sake of trying to able to complete every single boss challenges, but it's also about the fact that we can able to claim ourselves the final Sparkle Gem. So, everything else is complete, right? Well, as a result, we're technically not done with this just yet. So as you can see, we've got all the Sparkle Gems in the game, and after that, Stellar did somehow mention there was actually a special dress somewhere in the shop. So, and the good thing about this is though, is about the fact it's a good thing we did somehow grind as many of those coins as we could, thanks to the forms of the hide and seek challenges, so I was able to appreciate about this, especially concerning for the fact that as far as I'm aware, not only the special dress has now been accessible for buying stuff, but it's also about the fact that from what I can gather, there's also going to be a special ribbon somewhere, also in the shop as well. But before you purchase the final 2 things in the actual specific fashion shop, there's technically one more furniture we do need to buy in journey forms within a furniture shop, so that way we can able to spend the final 10 Sparkle Gems, so naturally speaking we can able to actually finally done decorating everything. So let's just go and purchase that, and that pretty much does it for everything for that particular shop. So, and there goes the rest of the forms of the Sparkle Gems themselves. So, anyways though, so let's check out the dress quickly, and my goodness, there's a lot of coins we do need to spend on. So because of that, yeah, we do need to able to spend about specifically 1,000 coins. So not only for the special dress, but as well as the forms of the special ribbon as well. So yeah, we somehow paid for about a grand total of 2,000 coins when it comes to buying those final 2 things here and there with that particular fashion shop. So as you can see, my goodness, she looks a lot more gorgeous than ever before when it comes to the forms of everything else sparkly related. So either way though, that's actually pretty swell. And there's also technically the final thing I want to mention about in regards of the forms of today's topic before we end off this entire Let's Play of Princess Peach Showtime, before we move on to the next bunch of Let's Plays eventually, and maybe the continuation of Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric, as a matter of fact. That actually, as it turns out, when it comes to the forms of Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, the actual developer for that particular version of the game is going to be Forever Entertainment, is going to be involved with the forms of the studio behind Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, which I'm almost assuming is going to be Monster Games, just like the forms of how it does it on the 3DS version. Well, actually, as it turns out, it isn't. So either way though, something's worth noting for. So, but anyway folks, we somehow completed everything in Princess Peach Showtime. I know technically there's one more thing I want to mention about, and that's what it appears to be about the fact that yes indeed, there is a heart gem you can able to actually equip with, that's basically though, when you managed able to actually decide to do some plays and what have you, that when you start the actual stage up, you're able to actually start things up with 5 hearts, whilst if you do manage to equip the heart gem, basically though it gives you 3 additional hearts, making a grand total of 8 hearts you can able to accumulate. So And as a result, no matter what though, there's nothing right to hum about in regards of the forms of everything else, especially concerning for the fact that if you couldn't tell, we've basically done everything. But there's technically few things we want to show off. Like, for instance, the album that we can able to show off, and that's something tells me about the fact that in order to able to actually get every single photos for the sake of the forms of the album, basically though, you know, with these sparkle gems, as we somehow keep on collecting for certain plays, as well as certain boss challenges here and there, basically though, that's essentially how you can get when it comes to able to actually see every single pictures on the album. So, ranging from specific themes like Sword Fighter, Mermaid, Cowgirl, Dashing Thief, etc, etc. And there's also certain photos that you can able to actually get if you do manage to complete every single mission objectives for the boss challenges. So, and yeah, there's nothing else I can really say about it. Even though technically you can able to actually see those as well, thanks to the forms of the staff credits as well, if you already know about this. So, but I digress. So, yeah, what was my final thoughts of Princess Peach Showtime, as a matter of fact? Honestly, I do enjoy it for the most part, even though it's a little bit too easy-sided things though, but regardless of anything else though, I still managed to enjoy it regardless, especially concerning for the fact that it's nice to see, you know, Princess Peach deserves her own game, just like the forms of how it does it back in 2005, for the Nintendo DS, known as Super Princess Peach, and it does have some issues, I will admit it though right away. Like, for instance, is about the fact, as I mentioned this before, the game is really easy, certainly a lot more easier than the forms of how it does it on most Mario games on the Nintendo Switch so far, especially concerning for the fact that I understand about the forms of the actual target audience, and on top of all that stuff though, is about the fact that, well, I think, fundamentally speaking, I was about the fact I feel like that the actual frame rate could have been higher, like, for instance, running at 60 frames per second. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't mind having a game running on 30 FPS or something, but it's just my nitpicking right there. But either way, and yeah, that's what I can really think about it, basically. So, and also I feel like about the fact that trying to go for the exact same levels again can get pretty repetitive after a while, even if you really want to go after every single aspect about it. But apart from those aside things though, I still managed to enjoy it regardless. So, well, I will admit though, the visuals looks really dang good, even especially noticeable concerning for the fact that despite the fact that this game has been developed by Good Feel, that they also did not only Wario Land, the Shake Dimension, as well as the forms of Yoshi's Woolly World, Kirby's Epic Yarn, in addition to the 3DS counterparts, Kirby's Extra Epic Yarn, and Poochie and Yoshi's Woolly World, and of course Yoshi's Crafted World. So yeah, that's what I can really think about it. So and as you can tell, I'm showing off the forms of the last few bits here and there. Like, for instance, you can able to actually check out these different transformations for Princess Peach. And there's also the forms of the sound test, where you can able to listen to the background music if you wanted to. So yeah, that's actually pretty standard stuff for the most part. And there's also the forms of that other mode that you can able to actually rewatch those specific cutscenes again if you feel like trying to go for a full movie compilation with all cutscenes and everything. So yeah, that's as far as I can show off in regards to the forms of Princess Peach Showtime. And do I honestly recommend this game for you guys? Well, if you're a Mario fan, obviously yeah, because obviously though, Princess Peach is the main star of this game. So generally speaking, I was about the fact that, well, yeah, nothing else I can really say about that, I guess. So, yeah, I hope you guys do enjoy this particular playthrough, or this, in some cases, I hope you guys do enjoy this entire Let's Play of Princess Peach Showtime. And I know for a fact that the entire process is a bit slow, but regardless of everything else though, it's a perfect opportunity that we did somehow manage to finish the game in time, just before we move on to the next month, which appears to be July. Although I was expecting to try to able to finish this game up during at some point in the earliest process there, but because the forms of some technical issues with all that particular battery life problem with our laptop at the moment, and on top of all that stuff though, we still felt a bit kind of rough in some scenarios. But hopefully by that time it's all the next couple of months and onwards, then hopefully the entire process should be a lot more better. So either way though, yeah, thank you guys so much for watching our Let's Play of Princess Peach Showtime. And yeah, nothing else I can really say about it. So this is me, Tiana, from the likes of the Mexi Toys. And hopefully by that time until next year, hopefully we'll get a chance to do Super Princess Peach for the Nintendo DS at some point in next year in 2025 to go alongside with the phones the 20th anniversary of the game's release of Super Princess Peach. So that would be a perfect opportunity to do that, and so much so about the fact that, well, hope you guys may be looking forward to do some more Let's Plays in the future. So even then, I can't tell you exactly what the next Let's Plays are going to be aside from the continuation parts of Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric, but even then, you shall wait and see what happens for the majority of July. So yeah, I'll see you guys at some point soon. Bye!